Go Hawks! Hey, go Hawks!
1-E-L-L! Everybody yell! Go Tigers! 1-E-L-L! Everybody yell! Go Tigers!
Willie, is that you? What are you doing?
Well, hey ho there, Tom. I'm just getting into the old school spirit. Just practicing some cheers from the old days.
You were a cheerleader in college?
Why, yes, I was, Tommy. I could excite the crowds with the best of them.
So, like, did you throw girls in the air and catch them?
Oh, no, not me, Tommy. I went to an all-boys school.
Well, anyway, speaking of school spirit, did you happen to see the display in our new neighbor's front yard?
Well, if you meant that air-filled plastic that's supposed to resemble a football-playing bird, then yes, I did.
Just my luck. Of all the guys that could have moved in next door to me, I get the raving Hawkeye fan.
Ah, yes. I do know that you're pretty fond of wearing the scarlet and gold. It's my understanding that the Iowa Hawkeyes and Iowa State Cyclones have a pretty good rivalry.
You got that right. And after the way the game ended this year, I really don't want him rubbing my nose in it. I was just starting to warm up to the guy. In fact, I was even thinking of inviting him over Saturday to watch some games. But I can't do that with a Hawkeye fan.
Sure you can. You just need to find a Switzerland.
Switzerland? This is football, not bobsledding.
Oh, I know that. What I'm talking about is neutral ground. You need to find a team that you can both like, a team you can both cheer for.
A team everybody likes.
I wonder who wrote that. I've been waiting like 5 weeks for us to put that up there. All right. So on Thursday, Elder Doug Siepkes and I went out and served communion to some of the members of our church who aren't able to be here on Sunday mornings for worship. One of the people we visited was Gladys Zweifel. Gladys Zweifel turned 100 years old this summer. She lives up in an assisted living complex in Spirit Lake. And as Doug and I scheduled this, I told Doug, well, if we're going to go to Gladys, we need to get there at around 3, and we have to plan to stay for coffee and cookies, because she's not going to let us leave unless we stay for coffee and cookies. Gladys is amazing. She's full of energy. She entertained us with stories. We're sitting there, and she points at her walker, and she says, yeah, I just got that walker. I take it for a run every morning. And she meant it. She didn't mean she runs, but she literally up and down the hallways, and she says, people know they just need to stay out of my way, because that's how I start my day. She made sure we had coffee and snacks. We got there at the same time as Ray and Shirley Ortman. Shirley is Gladys's youngest sister. So Gladys knew we were coming, but she didn't know Ray and Shirley were coming, so we got there. She had 3 place settings already set, but, so she hustles up and she gets a couple more place settings, sets them out for Ray and Shirley. Ray and Shirley don't drink coffee, so then she had to get some juice, and no problem at all. And as we're sitting there and we're having coffee, she apologizes again and again that she didn't have time to bake cookies. Instead, she served us graham crackers with a homemade frosting that she had made. And so the frosting was delicious. And she said, yeah, it's powdered sugar and butter and lemon juice and cinnamon. It's a new recipe. She's 100 years old, and she's still making new recipes. I've stopped in on Gladys before without calling ahead, without warning her that I was coming, and then, I've been in a hurry, and I just stopped in to say hello, and she's getting the coffee and the cookies out, and I'm like, Gladys, I don't have time, and she's just literally crushed. if I don't stay and have the coffee and cookies. Gladys has the gift of hospitality. Hospitality, that's what I want to talk about today. The biblical word hospitality comes from two Greek words. It doesn't necessarily mean what we generally think it does. The Greek word phileo is a word for friendship or brother, family. And the first part of the word for hospitality comes from this word, phileo, phileos. And the second half comes from the word xenos, which means stranger, foreigner, alien, even sometimes enemy. So in other words, hospitality is a spiritual ability to make a stranger feel like family. To take someone you don't know and make them feel at home. To take a foreigner and make them a friend. And Gladys has the gift of hospitality. In fact, of all the people I know, I can't think of a better example of someone who has this gift of hospitality. When Beth and I moved here, so this would have been 10 years ago, so Gladys would have been 90. She was still living on her own. She insisted that we had to bring the whole family over for supper, and she made this huge chicken dinner for our whole family. And at 90 years old, she just wants people to feel at home. So if any of you happen to be in Spirit Lake and find yourself with some extra time on your hands, stop in and see Gladys. She will be glad to have you. She will be thrilled if you stop, and she will make sure you have coffee, cookies, and whatever else she can find. But whether you have the gift of hospitality or not, hospitality is something we're all called by the Bible to practice. 1 Peter 4:9 says this, offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. Especially when it comes to our neighbors. We should make a practice of sharing our homes, sharing our food, sharing our time. So, we're continuing in a series called The Neighboring Life. For the past month or so, we've been considering the idea that when Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself, that it's possible, it's likely, it's probable that he meant your literal neighbor. I mean, he means more people than that, of course. But when he says, love your neighbor as yourself, that must include the people who live closest to you. And so we've been talking about 4 different practices that we can practice as neighbors. 4 words sort of rhyme so that they're easy to remember. Stay, pray, play, and say. 4 ways we can love our neighbors as ourselves. And we've already talked about 2 of them, stay and pray. So we've talked about staying present in our neighborhoods, getting to know the people who live around us. And we've talked about pray, talking to God on behalf of our neighbors. So today, we talk about play. And really, what we're going to talk about is hospitality. We want to be the kind of people who open our hearts and our homes to our neighbors. Make time and space for your neighbors. Throw parties. And today's sermon is going to be a little different. I'm going to do the first part. I'm going to talk about the idea of hospitality, and then I'm going to turn it over to Kim Smith, who's our Director of Children and Family Ministries, who also has the gift of hospitality, and she's going to apply this. She's going to talk about some ideas, some different ways that we can practice hospitality with our neighbors. So first, the idea. The big idea today is simply this. Jesus likes it when we socialize with people who don't know him yet. Jesus wants to mix with friends and neighbors who are not Christians. Jesus likes a good party. And here's our Bible story. It comes from Luke 5, verses 27 through 32. It says, after this, Jesus went out and saw a tax collector by the name of Levi sitting at his tax booth. Follow me, Jesus said to him, and Levi got up, left everything, and followed him. And then Levi held a great banquet for Jesus at his house, and a large crowd of tax collectors and others who were eating with him. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law who belonged to their sect complained to his disciples, why do you eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners? And Jesus answered them, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. So this story is about Levi. He's also known as Matthew. So this is probably the same man who wrote the Gospel of Matthew. So in his version of this story, he calls himself Matthew, but he's also known as Levi as well. And Levi becomes a Christian while working as a tax collector. Now, you may have heard that tax collectors back in Jesus' day were not all that popular. Of course, they're not all that popular today either, but in that world in particular, in Israel, someone who worked as a tax collector for Rome was someone who had literally betrayed their countrymen to work for the enemy. If you went to work collecting taxes on behalf of this occupying nation, you were seen as selling your people out. Plus, the Romans allowed tax collectors to charge more than was required. Anything above and beyond what Rome required, the tax collector was able to keep for themselves. And so, tax collectors were considered to be amoral, greedy, and without conscience. Once you became a tax collector, you pretty much gave up all hope of associating with a respectable part of society. And now Levi has this encounter with Jesus that radically transforms his heart. When Jesus calls to Levi, we're told that he got up, left everything, and followed him. He gives up his license to steal, walks away from his cash, turns over an entirely new leaf. But Levi does not forget about his friends. See, because of his profession, Levi has developed quite a network of relationships with people who are shoved to the edges of society, other tax collectors, prostitutes, drunks, your basic sinner class. And so now Levi wonders, might there be a way to introduce them to Jesus? Because you see, as Christians, we have a problem. We have a tendency to associate only with other Christians. Right? We preach about community here at the church. We encourage you to participate in small groups so that you get to know other people in the church. And we know that the people who go to the church have basically the same values, have the same worldview that we do. So we're comfortable having our kids play with other families that go to church. And we're comfortable spending our time with other people who go to church because we know we sort of see the world the same way. If you grew up like I did as a Christian, then it's quite probable that almost all of your friends throughout your life, at least for me, have come from within the church. And if you come to Jesus later in life, there can be a not so subtle pressure on you to trade in your non-Christian friends for Christian friends because those non-Christian friends are seen as a possible detriment to your following Jesus, that they represent life before Jesus. They might be a temptation to turn away from Jesus. And so we have a tendency to only associate within the church. But now that Levi has walked away from his tax collector's booth, the question is whether he's going to walk away from his friends as well. Well, Levi's not going that way. He's found something amazing in Jesus. He's had his life radically transformed by Jesus. Now he wants his friends to know Jesus too. So what does he do? He throws a party. He invites everybody he knows, everybody who's willing to be seen with him, and then he invites Jesus too. And you can almost hear the thoughts running through his head. If I can just get my friends where Jesus is, if they could just hang out with Jesus and the disciples for a little while and just see how down to earth these guys are, how real they are, if they could just spend some time talking to Jesus, maybe their lives will change like mine has. And so that's what he does. And I have a feeling this gathering wasn't, like a little Bible study where everybody's sitting in rows with their scrolls open in front of them, kind of like this, right? This is a party. Luke calls it a great banquet. There's this large crowd of tax collectors and others eating with Jesus. I imagine this looks quite a bit like our trunk or treat like our parking lot's going to look like later tonight with people just all over the place. Or even better, this probably looks a lot like a street dance during Flag Fest weekend outside a bar at about 12:15 at night. The real clue as to the festiveness of Levi's party is found in the reaction of the Pharisees. The religious snobs, the critics who follow Jesus around, they just can't stand to see how much fun it appears that he's having. So they stand on the sidelines and they whisper to anyone who will listen, does he know who these people are? Doesn't he know how bad this looks? And when word gets to Jesus, he's got a ready-made answer. He basically says, well, where else should I go? I'm the sin doctor. I came to earth to redeem sinners. So who else should I hang out with except for those who sin? And I imagine that Jesus was very proud of Levi that day. Because Levi was not content to leave behind all his old acquaintances and join some holy huddle. Levi saw the value of mixing his old friends with his new. So what about you? Is there room in your life for your neighbors who don't know Jesus yet? Are you willing to associate with people who don't go to church? Now, Levi had the advantage of literally being able to invite Jesus to his party, Jesus in the flesh. We can't do that. But the Bible says that we are Jesus' representatives on earth today. We are supposed to be salt and light. And we're supposed to go out, we're supposed to spend time with people, especially those in our neighborhood who don't know Jesus yet. Bill Hybels writes this in his book, Contagious Christianity. He says, salt must touch something to be effective. And the doctor has to find a way to spend time with people who need his services. You've got to seize opportunities to rub shoulders with irreligious people if you're going to reach anybody. Simple hospitality. Play. Jesus likes it when we socialize with people who don't know him yet. So, Kim, I've invited Kim, as I said, to come and just share some ideas on what this looks like for all of us to get to know our neighbors better.
And when he first asked me, I told him no, because I was raised way too Southern Baptist to preach. So I'm not preaching. I'm sharing some application. So now this is hard for me. I didn't really pray about this for a while because that was something I was raised with, and I'm still working through this with God. But I did appreciate the opportunity. I've thought about this for a long time. Some of you guys know us. Some of you might know it. Just to be a little bit of background, I'm Kim Smith. I'm your children and family and now women's ministry director here at Hope. And Ryan and I have been married for 30 years this year. So half of our marriage we've been at Hope Church. That's kind of amazing. And we have 3 sons that are now grown. Taylor is our artist who lives in Des Moines, and Reed is our second one. He just got married, brought us some girls, and he's our current favorite. And he lives in Cedar Falls. He's the SALT campus ministry freshman director there, and his wife's finishing up school. And then our caboose, Graham, a lot of you probably still know him. He just left for college, and he's over at Hawkeye, living at UNI. We have a lot of UNI plugs here, preparing to be a police officer. So those are our boys, and they've been raised in Hope Church. We call this their home church as well. And the reason that I told you some of that is we've been here for 16, 17 years, but I've actually moved close to 40 times in my life. So for us to be here that long is like a lifetime. It's probably why we've had 4 houses in Spencer, but we're done. So, but because my dad's job, his profession required us to move all the time, I was a professional new kid. I went to 11 schools before I graduated from high school. So when you're the new kid that often, you learn how to get involved, to meet people very, very quickly. I lived everywhere from South Texas to Alaska. My favorite places are places that snow and where it doesn't get above 82. If it hits 82 and a half, I'm told to go inside because apparently I get cranky. So Texas was great fun. But being new that many times, I think that's why this topic's really near and dear to my heart, because when you walk into a new place, you either got to sink or swim really fast. And it's the same thing in your neighborhood. Sometimes we wait too long. But I have to tell you again, speaking up here is really different for all of us today. I talk really fast, so I have slow written on my hand, and if I get going too fast, there are people in the congregation that are going to tell me to slow down. But I can save you a lot of time when you talk this fast. So my normal crowd is a little younger than you guys and a lot more rowdy. And if you really want to make me feel comfortable, you could jab your neighbor or raise your hand or even walk up and ask me in a whisper if you could go to the restroom, because then I would feel way more comfortable than I do right now. So, but I do appreciate the opportunity to share some of these things with you. I have the easy part. I don't have to explain or translate the original Greek or compare and contrast several different verses of Scripture. I'm just hoping to give you some insight and some practical ways to live out this command that we've been given. So most of you who do know me think that I'm up here to tell you to throw a block party or to have some big crazy event, but you'd be wrong. But I will tell you, this is going to mess with your life. When you ask a holy God to direct you and open the doors to others, he will, and it will mess with your life. This neighboring that we're calling it is not a suggestion, it's a command. And in Matthew 22, verses 37 through 40, Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself." All the law and prophets hang on to these two commandments. If you believe the Bible is true and realize the command behind this verse, you can't help but look at people and things differently. Some of us will find it easier to go across the world on a mission trip than to walk across the street and knock on a neighbor's door. I'm guilty of that too. Write a check rather than work in the yard while our neighbors are outside. It's hard. You have nothing to lose except maybe some self-centeredness, some privacy, and maybe some comfort. But what you have to gain is Christ-likeness. And if that's our goal as Christians, we need to take this seriously. But we wanted to give you some practical application to help in this area. I even have a slide. Look at that. No glitter on it, but I have a slide. So the number one is don't set yourself up to fail. Whatever you do, it needs to be simple, accessible, and inexpensive. This is not something you need to throw money at or to overthink. And I am the queen of overthinking. My mother calls this the chocolate heart syndrome. Whenever I get in over my head or get an idea that may be too big to be practical, she brings up this story with a grin. When I was in high school, about 1,000 years ago, I decided to celebrate my favorite holiday, Valentine's Day, with making and giving all of my friends chocolate hearts that I'd made myself. Hershey does it better. I don't know what I was thinking. But this was way before they came out with those really easy melted chocolates and those really neat silicone molds that just pop out. And so I decided to do this. And this was the night before Valentine's Day. You know, timing is everything. So knowing me, my original friend list probably had everyone in my small high school on it. So the night before Valentine's Day, I got started. I had my chocolate chips over the double boiler, and I had these metal heart-shaped pans. They were powdered sugar and ready to go. As the night progressed, my friend list got shorter and shorter. My mom gave up and went to bed. By the time I got done, I think I had 8 chocolate hearts to hand out to those extremely blessed individuals who were still on my friend list. It got smaller and smaller as well. So I go to school on Valentine's Day with these chocolate hearts all wrapped up, and I'm basically handing them out to these blessed individuals who made the final cut saying, "Happy Valentine's Day, Happy Valentine's Day," with a growl. My whole intent was derailed by the method I chose. That's really easy to do with anything, but especially neighboring. It can become more about us than the people that we're trying to reach out to. So in the kitchen, my mother said it looked like the Valentine elf fairy had exploded and died in there. She was very gracious and cleaned it up before I got home from school. I still, if you know me, have this tendency to way overthink things, but I'm working on it. So you keep it simple, accessible, and inexpensive. The second thing is to go small, just go. You know, you get started, you risk the awkward conversation, bake the cookies, rake the yard, move the snow. You just go. It's not going to get any better the longer you wait. Just go. So think about, what are you already doing? We talk about this here at Hope. In all of our ministry areas, we talk about what we're doing for people here at Hope in the building. And is there something in that particular ministry area, maybe an activity or something that we're doing that we can just move the needle a few degrees and turn it into outreach? Share it with the community. Is it doable? Will it help our community? Things like that. If you're already baking cookies for your family, if you're making cookies, bake some extra. Give a dozen to your neighbor. If you're still cooking, sometimes I forget and I cook like I still have 3 teenage boys at home. Instead of freezing it, take it to my neighbor. Maybe I've got a single mom who's really struggling or just needs a night off or a shut-in or just a neighbor. But just go. Another one is don't wait till life is perfect. Your house is never going to be done. You're never going to have the right furniture. Your kids are never going to be bigger. Or maybe your kids are supposed to be perfect and your house is supposed to be bigger, but it's never going to happen. So just go. Don't come up with excuses. And I have to say, my parents are amazing at this. My dad and mom are 2 of the most introverted, shy people you will ever meet. Go figure. They don't know where I came from. But they are one of the best examples I've ever seen of inviting people into their lives like right now, where they are. Even though they're super quiet, especially my dad, they never let anything stop them from reaching out to others. They never wait for the house to be perfect or clean. The neighboring book calls this scruffy hospitality. Just start. Don't wait, just start. They just invite you in. If you're working on something in my parents' house, you're going to be invited to dinner. If you are new and you walk into their church on Sunday, they're likely going to be the first people to invite you into their home. I cannot remember a Thanksgiving, no matter where we lived, wherever we were, that we didn't have people we didn't know. I don't think we're ever allowed to call them strangers. So people we didn't know, and others joining us for that day. They are just really good at this. They live this out daily, and I can tell you they are the most unlikely pair to do this. But I think they live this out the way God wants them to and the way God intended, and they do it in a way that works for them. And you have to do what fits you. Some of you are thinking, what fits me? None of this fits me. I don't want to meet my neighbors. I like pulling into the garage and not causing a disturbance or being a disturbance. I like shutting that door and going in my house. But you got to start thinking about things like this. What's your natural inclination? What do you like to do? What things do you enjoy? Invite someone to go with you. You know, if there's something you're going to, grab your neighbor, invite them along. If you're struggling with walking up to somebody new and how you start, watch somebody who meets people easily. Does that style work for you? At church, I've noticed we even become afraid to talk to people that we don't know because we're afraid we're going to insult them by assuming they're new. Well, you don't have to say that. You just walk up and say, I haven't met you yet. Instead of, are you new? No one's going to mind if you say, I haven't met you yet. So keep it simple. The same thing works in your neighborhood. We've been in our new neighborhood for 3 years. That's a long time for us. So I haven't done a great job of meeting my neighbors. And I know I could kind of die on the hill of, well, they didn't exactly rush over and bring me cookies, but that'd be kind of silly. So it doesn't help. You get brave and just go out and knock on that door. I noticed last Sunday we stayed out in the yard and worked on our leaves. And used to we just kind of wave at people as they walk by. If I said hello, people would actually stop and walk over. So just one little turn can sometimes make a difference. Since I've discovered that one of my love languages is crafts, I've had to learn to pare down my ideas to what I call a get real one. For instance, when we started this series, I start thinking, I should make all my neighbors a fall or Christmas decoration. That's where my brain goes, but that's not what will work or is even necessary. So I way overthink this. So find what works for you, and then figure out what part reality plays in it for you. And what works for me will not work for you. I can pretty well guarantee that. The fifth one I thought of was, can you receive? How well do you allow people to bless you in your life? Does your pride get in the way of accepting help? How do you feel if somebody showed up and mowed your yard? I can tell you we'd be okay with that now. We've learned to be okay with that. Raked your leaves. Are we able to accept kindness graciously and not twist it to judgment? I spent 5 weeks on bed rest when we were waiting on Graham to be born, safe and healthy, and we learned how humbling it is to have people bless you. Our church and community in Texas blessed us with food, laundry, and childcare for over 5 weeks. It was extremely humbling. We kind of chuckled that everybody in that church washed our underwear, cleaned out our refrigerator. That was surprisingly humbling, the refrigerator thing. But what a blessing it was. And again, after the crazy year we've had here in Spencer, we've had many of you reach out to us in so many ways and bless us. And once we relaxed and let go of our pride and control, we could be appreciative and be grateful to all of you that acted on, I think, God-given impulses. Some of you are the first to reach out and bless them, people that you see that have needs in areas that they need help, but you would be so embarrassed or upset if they turned around and did the same for you. We need to learn to be gracious receivers and not keep a tally sheet. That part's tricky. And another one is the long haul for the right reason. Neighboring is not an event, it is a process. It's going to take some time. So there's an acronym, BLESS, in the neighboring book that I really liked. BLESS, and B is begin. Begin with prayer. God gives us a window in our brain. When you start praying for your neighbors, where you're going to see things you haven't seen before. Ask God to help you with this neighboring, and you'll be surprised to see how soon you'll be given opportunities and know exactly what to do. Be a student of your neighborhood. Ask God, what does my neighborhood need? Apparently, they don't need personalized fall and Christmas decorations or chocolate hearts, but they need something. L is for learn their name. Get started. Just learn their names. We asked you a few weeks ago to start figuring out your neighbors' names. The E, engage in conversation. Just chat in the yard. I was surprised Sunday about what I learned about my neighbors just in that few minutes. The S, seek to be intentional. Make a point of this. And then the other S, share your story. And I know we're going to be talking more about that one next week. But talk to them. Just be real with them. So don't quit too soon. It takes time. Celebrate your small victories. Maybe you're waving at a neighbor every day when you pull out of your driveway and they just ignore you. Keep doing it. Eventually, they will wave back. So now it's your turn. You've got some cards. You're used to us putting cards on your pew now for the last few weeks. I want you to check those out. We know these are a big ask. We know this is one more step in. This is a big ask. But you can do it. You know, and we on the staff struggle with this as well. This isn't something that we always do easily or right either. So look at those and see what you think about them. And we've seen some trading going on. We're okay with that. There's some out on the fence. But it is a big ask, and we want you to think and pray about these. We do have a couple of opportunities for you to practice right away. Today at Trunk or Treat, this is a huge time to practice your neighboring just here in our parking lot. It's not too late to join us. Feel free to come and help us out this afternoon. We'll be setting up all afternoon. And then Tuesday is Halloween, and I know we moved Trunk or Treat from Halloween to Sunday, and there were a couple of reasons for that. One of them is it's way, way easier on our volunteers. They can get here, they can be here earlier. We were able to do it a little earlier. But another reason was it puts us back in our neighborhoods. And it's a night when people are outside. It's a great night for you to be out and just meet the people walking around your streets. I, of course, already way overthought this. I thought I'd have chili and hot chocolate and some cookies, and then I realized I was running my own little mini trunk or treat. So we'll probably be outside with maybe cookies. So, see, that's how the brain goes. And you can't let winter be an excuse up here. This is actually the best time to get started. It's not going to surprise or startle your neighbors if you show up with a plate of goodies. This is the best time to do that. So give it a shot. Get a little braver and try that. We don't get it right all the time either. I am certainly not an expert in this. And really what I've just told you, none of this is new information. None of this is anything that enlightening or that exciting, but it's about being intentional. I told the boys if I was ever going to get a tattoo, which made them roll on the floor, but if I got a tattoo, it would say intentional. Because that's one thing I try to think about in everything I do here on staff, but just in my own life, is, you know, God wants us to be intentional about the lives he's given us. And this neighboring fits in that. If we're just intentional about the things that we're doing and just move that needle just a little and bless your neighbors with things you're already doing, it's not hard. So be intentional about the life you're living and try to do that. And then the most important thing I think is remember, it's not up to you. Be faithful and God will take care of the results. It's up to God, it's not up to us. So would you please join me in prayer? Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you so much. We thank you for your Son. We thank you for the blessing and the gifts that you give us on a daily basis. Lord, we know that you've put us where you put us on purpose, and you know exactly what we need to do in our neighborhoods, and all we have to do is ask. Just help us to be able to live real lives in front of the people that we're surrounded by, to show them your hope, to show them your comfort, to show them all the many, many blessings you give us because we're your children, and all they need to do is just ask. And help us to be real as we live in front of these people, and to continue to try to be intentional in all that we do. We just ask these things in your name. Amen.